You're listening to episode 28 of the Ento podcast, and on this week's show we look at insects could be a much more lucrative industry in the US if Americans move past their aversion to bugs. Fish factor, lots of chums, halibut, dock price down, insect-based fish meal. Pestrant makes a meal out of worms. So all of that's coming up in this week's episode of the Ento podcast, so stay tuned.
Looking to stay up to date on all things entomorphagy? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Ento Podcast with your host, Ross Bell.
Hi, and welcome to episode 28 of the Ento Podcast, the show that brings you the latest news and views from the world of entomophagy and insects as animal feed. I'm your host, Ross Bell. So this week we've got three stories, and the first one comes from Business Insider and is entitled Insects Could Be a Much More Lucrative Industry in the US if Americans Move Past Their Aversion to Bugs, and it's by David McNeil. Aside from the billions that insects generated by pollination, nutrient recycling and their other ecological benefits, they've helped numerous industries for several centuries. The Spanish conquistador Cortes in around 1523 brought back tiny insects called cochineal, which helped the Spanish economy for the next couple of centuries. This red dye goes by many names: E120, carmine, or natural red 4, and up until 5 or 6 years ago, it was added to the frappuccinos to give them their colour. A kilo of the cochineal these days sells for around $40. In Japan, their dedication to the silkworm through the 19th century led to an industrial boom, which by the 1930s, the silk-producing caterpillar put Japan on the global market with 80% of the world's silk coming from the country. But it's that sort of insect obsession that if the US could adopt, could open up more lucrative inroads. Some companies that are trying to start making these inroads in the US insect market are Chirps Chips, Don Boguito, and Exo. Chirps make a cricket flour tortilla and appeared on Shark Tank, gaining the backing of Mark Cuban for around $100,000. Exo are a Brooklyn-based company that produce protein bars, and Don Boguito are a snack producer that once began as a San Francisco food stand and is now gaining popularity every year. But one thing that all of these companies have in common is that they don't produce the insects themselves. And as we'll hear in the next story, this is where farms like Coalo Valley Farms, Wendy Lou McGill's Rocky Mountain Micro Ranch, and AgriProtein enter the market. So the Business Insider article carries on to go through some of the other things that these companies do. And one of the things is sort of the AgriProtein, again we'll hear in the next story, one of the things they're looking to do is to do the farms with an increase in the number of farms that are around the US. We're hoping that the price of the insects will drop, which will then bring more people into the market to be able to create things with these products, or the byproducts, whether it's the cricket powder or whether it's sort of black soldier fly for animal feed. And with the more people on, then we'll start getting more people to eat them, and it'll sort of reduce the price down. Because at the minute, a lot of the prices are quite high for some of the products, but that's because the fact that the cost of getting the insects is high because of the lack of farms. So the second story we've got comes from the Seward City News, and it's Fish Factor, lots of chums, halibut dock price down, and insect-based fish meal. And it's by Elaine Welsh. So the article talks about how the chum salmon in the Alaskan fishing region is sort of in record numbers this year. It's the biggest harvest since 2000. Then goes on about how the halibut on the other end has dropped down in price. The piece in this article I quite liked was there's an end section on using flies for fish meal, which ties into the first section about the chum, because chum salmon's also called dogs up in Alaska, and that's because for a long time it was used as the prime food source for the Alaskan native dog teams. So we can see that a lot of the fishing waste that comes in is turned into animal feed. And I know that there are a lot of companies within the UK and US markets that have started making dog food or dog treats with cricket powder. So perhaps if we can start increasing the farms and bringing in crickets to more mainstream pet food, we can start reducing some of the overfishing that we've got, and just sort of start reducing down some of the waste streams that we have within our agricultural sectors. So the last piece, like I say, talks about flies being used as an alternative to fish meal for farmed fish. And AgriProtein, who are a South African company, and the winner of the first ever Food Chain Global Champion Award in the UK for its product Magmeal. So Magmeal is an animal feed. It's the main ingredient within food for fish and animals, and this is made from flies and it's reared on food waste. So around 70% of the farmed fish production costs are fish meal costs, and this also includes sort of where we've got the Alaskan salmon farms, and each year a quarter of the world's fish catches, which is around 20 million tons, goes back into the farmed fish market as fish meal. So that's 20 million tons of either, I'm hoping, it's sort of waste products rather than fish that are too small for consumption or fish that are just not popular than the local fishmongers. So it can take up to 4 pounds of the wild fish-based meal to grow 1 pound of farmed salmon. The fact that it takes the 4 pounds of fish meal to get 1 pound of farmed salmon, this leads to a few problems. So we can get overfeeding, where that then changes the natural habitat around where the farms are and causes some sort of ecological problems there. Also, if they're not using waste fish, but they're specifically going out to fish for items that are just going to be turned into fish meal, then that can lead to sort of other problems where we're overfishing certain species, etc. So they're under a lot of pressure. They're under a lot of criticism and pressure to try and find other sources for their feed. The tests have proven that all kinds of insects can make good feed, but the high fat content in the black soldier fly larvae provides an extra nutritional boost. So AgriProtein called the US the world's centre of protein consumers and organic wastes. So it's a natural sort of fit for them to start looking at building black soldier fly farms within the US and try and pull these waste streams in and get something useful out of them. And they plan to build around 200 fly farms within the US and Canada by 2027, and that should lead to them being able to supply $100 billion worth of aquafeed to the market. There's large numbers at these that we're talking about in sort of terms of food costs that AgriProtein can bring in. So I'll do a bit more research into AgriProtein and see if I can get any more stories on them and bring those across on future shows. So the final story we've got for today comes from the Baltimore Sun. It's written by Jacob de Noble. For most of his 78 years, Emanuel Lohmann's one fear on Earth was worms. But today he got his revenge on the slithering invertebrates in the most primal way, by eating them. Urich Pest Control's pop-up restaurant, or Pestrant, was at the Pratt & Light Plaza in Baltimore, and the event featured specially designed dishes, including June beetles and crusted croquettes, fried cricket crostini, grasshopper chocolate bark, and toughest for Mr. Lohmann, Mayland mealworm crab cakes. The event was designed as a way to highlight the nutritional value and edibility of insects and other bugs, supplemented by a $5,000 donation to the Maryland Food Bank from the Pest Control Company. Pestrant chef Jim Benson said that the dishes were designed to bring people in and remain appetizing while still highlighting their six-legged origin. And they all had bugs prominently placed on top or crushed and sprinkled on as added texture, with the mealworm crab cakes having the mealworms internally in them, as well as a fried mealworm garnish. Mr. Lohmann was surprised to see the Pestrant at the plaza, but said the mealworm crab cake was some of his favourite dishes. My family is gone, but I know they're laughing at me. I can feel them laughing at me now. All you had to do was pick up a worm and throw it at me, and I'd jump out the window, Mr. Lohmann said. When you live to be this age, you'll try anything. Roxanne Miller, on the other hand, made plans to visit the Pestrant when she heard about the event and said, I'm a foodie, so anything new I'm willing to try. I had the fried crickets and they were really good. This was 11 courses' first time cooking with the bugs. Urich President John Mayer said the catering companies had two very divergent responses to being asked to cook a multi-course meal involving bugs. People would either tell us, absolutely not, or that sounds great. So I know that over in the UK we used to have Rentokil used to do a Pestron sort of pop-up, but I haven't seen them around for a couple of years. But the Ulrich company seems to be doing quite a lot of these around the States, so it'd be nice if we could get some over here so we can try them. But that's it for this week. If you're in the UK and interested in trying to incorporate insects, come over to Crick8 and you can try some crickets, either whole or powdered. So you can find out more at kric8.co.uk. But till next time, this is Ross saying ta-ra for now.
Thanks so much for listening to the Ento Podcast. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit theentopodcast.co.uk and on Facebook and Twitter at The Ento Podcast. We'll catch you next time.